Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Couple of Nukes. As always, I'm your host, Mr. Whiskey, and I still have a bit of a cold. The weather drops from 70 to 30 here in Georgia, and I think that may be influencing it. So I apologize for the if you can hear my nose is stuffed and it's not a good time. But we are going to be talking today about bullying and in all kinds, both cyberbullying and in person, and just the impact it can have. They always said that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words mean nothing. And it's quite the opposite. Words do cause quite the damage. In fact, we see more people dying from suicide than regular incidents almost in terms of words can kill. Words can hurt. We've seen such a rise over the past 2 decades really of self-harm and suicide. I've been on shows guesting about suicide in children from ages 8 to 25, and the numbers are awful. They've almost doubled, and even more. And as I studied, for every successful attempt, which I don't even want to call it successful because that puts in a positive connotation, which it's not, there are about 200 or so failed attempts. So whether that's self-harm or an attempted suicide that failed for a variety of means. So the world can be a really cruel place, a very cruel place. And so we're going to discuss today ways to handle that, to deal with the mental health and the toll of damage from other people. And also, hopefully, you'll learn not to be a bully if you already are one. I encourage you not to be. But we are here with Justine Rodes. She experienced everything I just talked about. She was bullied and to the point of mental health issues, including self-harm and suicidal ideation. And I don't even like to say mental health issues because it sounds like there's something wrong with her, and there's not. There are so many people being bullied out there, and really the issue is with the bully themselves, which we'll get into that, including the power of online anonymity. So, Justine, would you please tell us a little bit more about this and introduce yourself for us?
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate that introduction. You've really nailed on a lot of amazing points of what's currently happening in the world of mental health. And I like when you said that you didn't like saying mental health issues. I personally like to say mental health challenges, meaning that we know it can be
Mm,
challenging, but it's not like, oh, it's wrong, it's bad, right?
right.
So I just want to just say that, and I appreciate that. But yes, my name is Justine, and I am the host of Mentally a Badass podcast, also the founder of the Mentally a Badass brand. We have the podcast as well as our clothing line, and we have an Instagram account that's filled with reels for entertainment and for community and such. And I recently just opened up a Facebook for our community. But yes, I've been dedicating a lot of my time to mental health advocacy since I was 17 years old. I went to school for psychology, and so I have a BA in psychology. I was going to be a therapist, but at that time, I still wasn't fully there and really mentally stable because I feel like if I listened to other people's problems, I probably will cry with them. So I wasn't in that right state of mind. So I didn't want to get my master's and be in debt when I wasn't ready. So I decided, so basically the way my life turned is I actually after college did the Disney college program and then went more towards into like marketing and guest service and such. But I recently just left that. Right now, I currently do social media marketing and, of course, the Mentally a Badass brand. And so I'm very grateful that we have social media because I wouldn't be able to do what I do today. So at that time, when I wanted to be a therapist, we didn't have what we have now. There were podcasts, but they weren't really spoken about. And there wasn't, I mean, we had Instagram, of course, but it wasn't, it didn't have the same type of impact like it does today.
Right.
So yeah, so absolutely grateful for that. So this is what I do majority of my day, and it's very rewarding.
Yeah, you just touched upon something we discussed quite a bit on the show, which is that technology is a tool like anything can be used for good or evil. And so there are a lot more platforms out there for bullying to happen, for hate, for perversion, for all of that. But there are also so many more platforms out there providing self improvement, life advice, whatever it may be, or even just more comedy shows for people to escape and, kind of forget about the world for a while, which
Mhm.
I recommend doing in a balance. There is a balance to be had because, like you said, we need to work on ourselves as well, and we can't just escape. And comedy is just one example, but, that other people use alcohol, drugs, whatever substance it is, and it can get pretty bad. And I appreciate you recognizing and having that self awareness to know that you weren't at a good place to be helping others, because I think there are a lot of people who are hurt and traumatized, and so they want to prevent that from happening to other people, which is a great thing. I'm not knocking that at all. I love that passion and that heart and that empathy, but I agree that you have to be healed to some capacity, and I think that ties directly into podcasting with the fact that anyone can start a podcast, whether they're ready or not. So I think it's always important to really analyze ourselves and put the brakes on sometimes and see where we're at. Now, you mentioned what you're doing nowadays with the podcast and the Facebook group, but I know you also have Start Day One, which is a mental health nonprofit. Is that founded by you, or is that just one that you support?
Oh, it's one I support. My friend is the founder.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I was just wondering how involved you were with that because I know that's also on your link tree.
Yes, I recently just put that there. Actually, so I've known the founder for since I actually started the podcast. He was a guest years back, and we talked about his nonprofit. But he recently reached out to me and asked if I wanted to support his campaign. So basically, his idea is he wants to support mental health podcasters to be able to provide them the resources to expand. So if they want to do like workshops or travel here to do that, tour. So pretty much anyone who donates to it, they're supporting that movement. But the whole idea of his nonprofit is focusing on preventing versus waiting until someone has like a suicide attempt. So yeah, it's really awesome what he's doing.
Right, that actually ties directly into what we're talking about, which is, all the resources out there, including mental health podcasts. So to support that is great because a lot of people have, a great show and they have a, variety of different resources for mental health. But again, to do podcasting full time, to have the income to spread it to all the people, can be difficult. So I think that's a great organization to support. And I completely agree. But before you had a podcast and you were doing that, you talked about being bullied in school. So if you could get into the details of what that looked like. We know bullying comes in a variety of different ways. For you personally, what was that experience?
Yeah, so it started when I was a child, mostly at school, but also at home. But I'll get into the school part first. So it started when I was in third grade. So I was 9 years old. I was a new kid out of school. I was in a private Catholic school. And the girl who was my bully, I was like best friends with her at first. Like we'll have sleepovers. I was very happy. I was like, yes, this is going to be great. I have all these friends. But then she turned on me.
Mm,
And at that time, as a child, I didn't understand why she hated me. And that got me wondering. And then I think what me like understanding now is I was also friends with her friends. So, naturally, when you're friends with one person, you're gonna be friends with the other person. It's a small classroom, it's like 30
right.
people. I guess from what I'm learning now is that that bully was territorial. So they're probably like, oh, why? Like, I don't like how she's your friend. She's my friend. So, and I know it kind of sounds really like child. I mean, there are child, so obviously it's childish. But I know it sounds like typical elementary such, but also it's not when it really truly affects you. And I'm telling my story today as a 29-year-old. And I can't wait to talk about how bullying affects your identity so much. So when I was 9 years old, your brain is developing. Your brain is
Yeah.
literally taking in everything that is around. So when you're constantly told something, right? And it's still in my brain, is they will always call me stupid, ugly, and weird. And you know that it stuck with me if I remember this exact three words that I kept constantly being called, right? So since people call me stupid, it's so since I was being called stupid, then my grades were not doing that great because I had a belief that I was stupid, but I wasn't. I have ADHD, which was undiagnosed then. So my learning style is different from people who don't have a neurodivergent brain. But of course, around that time, the school system, I mean, till today, the school system's not really built for people who are neurodivergent. But so yeah, so basically they're calling me stupid because of my neurodivergent brain, which obviously, we didn't have education on that then. They would call me weird because I don't know, I guess I'm my personality. I I mean, honestly, being weird now is a good thing in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah.
It's my personality. Like I show my weirdness like on my brand. People, the right people would be attracted to it, and then the people like so. But yeah, and then ugly was like they would think I'm ugly, and then what's crazy is that I truly, truly, truly believe that, right? And so every time I was told that, I look in the mirror and I would just think I'm so ugly. Like, oh my God, my hair is disgusting, my eyes gross, my glasses. But then now I'm looking at old photos of myself around that age, and I'm like, I wasn't ugly at all. I look at like just myself there, I'm like, what? I'm like, I mean, in my obviously the way I think, I don't think people, I would never think people are ugly. Everyone's beautiful, but it's just like me just looking at my looks then. I'm like, I really was, it's mind blowing because I guess I had like this cognitive distortion of how I looked and such. But yeah, no, it's crazy, and that just shows how how much those words affected me. Like you were saying before, the whole sticks and stones may break your bones, but words may never hurt you. Like that's completely like the opposite. So like think about it like this, when you're told negative things as a child, you have this whole like negative idea of yourself, and that develops into your core beliefs. And with my therapist, she said to me, she's like, your core beliefs are technically always going to be there. You just learn how to like, I guess, cope or handle it, and just know that like you hear that voice in your head like if something like you if I mess something up, I'm like, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. You know what I mean? Like I get hard on myself and I don't realize it. I literally have people telling me like, Justine, like stop being so hard on yourself. Like people even know who don't even know me that well, and they call me out on it, and I don't even realize it. Right? So that's when you know that it affected me if this is starting to be subconscious, and it's hard, and I have to pretty much I guess well, they will say they usually would use the word reparent, which I can go into my home life soon. But it's like just changing, like pretty much having a completely new brain. And you may know that like the brain, you can literally like completely change, like rewire your brain.
Yeah.
Like your brain can literally do that, which is phenomenal because it's like if you're in a bad position, like this is why I tell people that how much hope there is. And actually, before we got onto this, I was on this other guy's podcast, and he's around his 60s, right? And he struggles with like depression and anger and ADHD, and his family doesn't think things bad of him, right? So I was listening to him, and that just it made me really sad because during his time, he didn't have what we have today.
Yeah.
He kept telling me, he's like, I don't know what's wrong with me. Like, what do I do? What do I do? And like I said, it broke my heart because he, his generation didn't want to like talk about it. Like
Mm.
they would say like, oh, you're seen but not heard. Like that was apparently a saying back in the day. And so he's so obviously when we're talking, he had a lot of negativity in the conversation, which it didn't like bother me much because I understand because like negativity like comes from depression. But it just shows that it's gonna take him a lot of time to change the way he talks about things and the way you're gonna look at things, right? Like for me, I've worked so hard on the way I look at things in life. And when you change your way of looking at things, it's definitely a huge help. So I think going back to the bullying, and I'm going to transition into my home life, is that when you're surrounded by all of that, you take all of that in as a child, and that becomes like your personality in a way. Which is like actually I'm not gonna say funny, but I have borderline personality disorder as well. So going into like my home life, so I was bullied severely at school, which by the way was so bad I had to leave in fifth grade and transfer to a different school because no one protected me. But that's a whole other
Mm.
thing. So at home I had a mother that has severe mental illness, and even though she didn't like beat me, her words pretty much beat me, I guess. Um, and so with her, and she's in that whole like generation as that other guy that I was talking about, is that they don't know how to like handle their emotions. They don't know how to
Yeah.
regulate. So I think about that now, and it's like, yeah, if I was a kid, I was being like, especially with someone who has ADHD, you would get naturally frustrated, right? But like, she didn't know, all she knew was yelling at a kid because that apparently would shut them up because her mom did it to her, but worse. So that's what she knew. But as we know, that's not healthy for the child. Of course, there's a place where you'll naturally have to, I guess, yell. And I actually did talk with a lady who talks a little bit about mental health and parenting. But if a kid, let's say, spills something on the ground, right, and ruins the carpet, mistakes happen. But
Right.
when I grew up, it was like the end of the world.
Mm.
So pretty much, so because of that, you develop these like, if I make a mistake for anything, I'm automatically assumed that I go into like a fight or flight, like, oh my God, I'm gonna get yelled at. Like even when I was working, I used to work at Disney and I used to do like a call center kind of job. And if I got an email saying we need like to go in for like a meeting, I would automatically assume someone's gonna yell at me. And but the thing is, like, no, that's not the case. I mean, I think that time, I think there was something I technically did wrong, but it wasn't like, oh, this, like, no, they were just like having a conversation with me, like, hey, just be mindful next time. And that's totally fine. But because of all of my past experiences with people who would just the way they would treat me, like yell at me, call me this, call me that. And I was so helpless as a child. So, yeah. And then also my sister, she is 6 years older than me. So I was, a little, so think about it. Like I'm obviously smaller than her. So it's easy for her to bully me. And she also, I was born with a cataract in my eye. So my parents naturally were giving me more attention when I had to have surgery, right? But of course, I know with my sister, they don't think like that. They're like, oh, well, mom's giving her all, like my sister, all this attention. So ever since then, and still today, actually, hope you didn't listen to this episode ever, but and still today, it's still there.
Yeah.
I mean, her and I get along way better now. Like we're like that's yeah. But if we ever like get into a disagreement, all the stuff just comes up from like
Yep.
20
The
years ago. Yeah,
the
exactly.
list.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I learned now that my sister, I guess that's kind of like in her core in her background, like thinking like, oh, mom loves her more than me. So since then, since that moment, my sister resented me. So she made sure she made my life a living hell. And that's what she did. So be thinking about going to school, getting bullied from that kid, being everybody hating you, and then coming home to that, right? And my mother who didn't have emotional intelligence like at all, and then my dad who was never there. He was
Mm.
always like, he means well, but he was always like working all the time. He provided. But yeah, he was never really there emotionally. So when I actually was self-harming and got caught when I was a junior in high school, my dad was completely shocked. It completely caught him off guard. He was like, I don't understand why you would do something like this. And I said, well, because I guess I felt neglected. I felt like no one loves me. I felt I hate myself. And, you know, but my mom was like, I'm not shocked. I'm like, okay, well, well, I think it's because like the mental illness runs in the family. But pretty much all of that bullying that I was, talking to you and feeling so much hate from everybody, I always had mental breakdowns and crying fest of like, why does no one like me? Why does everybody hate me? And I'm knowing that I can talk about this now without crying shows that I've done a lot for
Mm.
healing because I used to cry about this stuff. But I'm just so thankful and glad that I didn't resort to suicide. I'm so glad that my mom saw my call for my basically like my call for help. Is that what they say? I guess call for help. Yeah. Uh, then they took me to a psychiatrist, and then cry for help. That's what it is.
I didn't want to say it because I was like, cry and call are so similar. I was
Yeah.
like, I'll just be a
Yeah,
jerk, and you're
yeah.
just like, it's cry, it's not call. I was like, same
No,
thing. I
I
know
wish you
exactly what
could
you're
have told me
saying.
that because I'm just like, it's not call. In my head, I'm like, no, it's not. Why can't I find the word for it? For the future, you're more than welcome to correct me.
Yeah, I was like, did
But
she mean cry for help? I'm like, I guess they're kind of the same thing. She's showing she needs help.
yeah, yeah. I mean, call for help. You think of like, if you get hit by not hit by a car, but you know what I mean. But
Yeah.
yeah, cry for help. Okay, cry for help is what I mean. So, yeah. So they took me to a psychiatrist, and then that's when I was diagnosed with bipolar 2, and I felt a sense of relief during that session. And the reason is because I went through 4 to 5 years of thinking, what is wrong with me? Because of the self-harming. And I was like, why do I do this? Like, why I was so angry, right? But that diagnosis meant like it made so much sense. And so it was basically giving me an opportunity like, okay, now I know what's happening. Now I can go ahead and start healing and start working on myself, right? So that's when it started. Though the first thing they did was give me meds. That's like naturally the first thing they do. And when they were working, which if they're working, that's when you have that actual disorder. But
Mm,
at that time, I was like, "Oh, I'm feeling good. I don't need to go on these anymore." And that's usually when the first time you're on meds, like that's the same like mistake that everybody makes is that they're like, "Oh, I feel better. We're good." But yeah, that wasn't the case. But I've had once I graduated high school and I got out of like that world where um, you know, I was bullied there too, but cyberbullying on form spraying, where people would literally my inbox was blowing up and pretty much kind of going viral in a way. And I was getting people saying the words that I told you, ugly, weird, stupid. So I was like reinforcing my beliefs.
yeah.
Yeah, in high school, which obviously, if you reinforce it, that goes more towards the self-harming because I'm truly believing it. And then I would get stuff like, oh, go kill yourself and this and that. And I was called other things like, oh, you're such a slut and whatever. And then one person even wrote a paragraph of how they want me to kill myself. Like people literally took this time. And still today, I'm not going to know who it is. It's
Yeah.
anonymous. So I'm not, I mean, hopefully it wasn't a friend that I have till today, but yeah, that was, I guess, my first experience of cyberbullying. And what I did is I'm pretty sure I probably had moments when I cried just naturally as a teenager. But there was one time I had a lot of uh negative comments. But I had a Sweet 16 to go to that night. So I literally read everything and I closed my laptop and I'm like, all right, time for my fake smile. Let's go
Mm,
dancing. I,
yeah.
like I mean, I don't say, oh yeah, that's how you handle it. That's not what I would say. I remember that day when I literally just like ha 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 close laptop. But yeah, so I started my healing journey as soon as I graduated high school because I got away from my small town, that small town like toxic vibe.
Mm,
And
yeah.
I went away to college. I started doing working out more, having deeper relationships with people. Then I went away to college. Sorry, I did 2 years in community. Then I did 2 years in traditional 4-year college.
Okay.
And I actually had bullying there. That could be a whole other story. Yeah, yeah. So I basically around that time I was uh I was triggered, but I also at the time I had a committed relationship with somebody, so that helped me with my self-esteem because at least I had a person versus like when I was in high school I didn't really have that. I was pretty much alone. But and also I was older then. So I'm like, okay, I think I can defend myself, right? But the thing was with these college roommates is that they weren't directly mean to me. They weren't like, "Oh, Justine, you're so ugly." Like they weren't doing things like that.
Passive
Like
aggressive.
it was more passive aggressive. So, it's kind of crazy. It's kind of like the same pattern. So this girl, it was my first time ever experiencing having roommates. It was an apartment style. There's 2 bedrooms and 5 girls, so three in one and two in the other.
It's
And this
crazy.
one, yeah. And then, but this one girl, I knew her already, so I was like, yes, at least I know somebody. And then these other girls, we all got along so well, like everything was great. I'm like, oh, I love college, right? And then this one girl just turned on me. And I was like, we're not doing this again. Like literally, I'm like 20 years
Yeah.
old. I'm like, we are not going down this route again. So I felt that she didn't like me. And it's because we went from like having the whole best friend vibe to like all of a sudden she just turned on me. And still today, I still don't know what that reason was, by the way. So yeah, she turned on me and I was like, and I confronted her like nicely and I just said, hey, I'm feeling that you're upset with me. That's what I said to her. And she's like, no, I'm not upset with you. And I said, okay, I feel like there were some days that we were having fun, we went to a party, like we were great, and now all of a sudden you're just ignoring me. Because there was also even times, oh my God, I'm like remembering this right now, that I'll be sitting in the dining room and then she'll come in, I'll say her name, and she'll just walk away. But it didn't make any sense. There was no fight, there was nothing. And
Mm.
my inner child was screaming because
Yeah.
it was thinking it's going through it again. So I was like spiraling. And honestly, I didn't remember that part until I talked about the story right now with her just completely literally walking away and not even acknowledging me. Thinking about that now. And so yeah, so there was like moments of that. And I confronted her so many times. And just nice to be like, hey, like I just feel like you're mad at me. Like you're ignoring me here. And I saw you subtweeted about me. Like there was
Yeah.
some, yeah, like I I know she subtweeted about me when she was like right next door. Like I was in the kitchen, I was making food, right? And then typically when you eat your food, your dishes are in the sink, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
usually clean up after, right? So that was I think I was making ravioli that day from my memory. And so the dishes had like obviously leftover pasta sauce in the pot. And I mean, you've made obviously pasta before, so you know what that looks like. And yeah, I was gonna clean it after. And then so she tweets about me saying I'm like a dirty roommate or something like, oh, my roommate never does her dishes or something. And it was just me and her in the apartment. And I was only my stuff in so obviously it was about me. And like she was right and she knew that I was next door. So part of me wanted to go into her room and be like, do you want to say it to my face?
Exactly.
Part of
Exactly.
me wanted to do that. And unfortunately, I didn't. But actually, it probably was a fortunate thing because it was probably starting to a cat fight. But I was trying to, you know, keep it like pretty much like have the emotional intelligence. It's like, okay, like try to think before I act because part of me, yeah, I really wanted to go at her. Trust me, I did. But I just didn't know where it was gonna go. And I don't know her well enough. You know what I mean? Like she
I
can
would
just
have bet
go into
money
a
on you though. If you're bipolar, you got that like angrier side in you. I would have bet the money on you winning the fight.
oh God. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I was also way smaller than her.
That doesn't matter. I know
Yeah.
there are weight classes for a reason. I'm just saying I would have bet money on you. So I'm not saying I would have
uh,
won the money, but that's what I would have done.
uh, yeah, honestly, I feel like I have a theory that she probably was too. Just the way, like me looking back at it, just her behaviors. Okay, so anyway, so that was that, and then it was like the end of the semester, and I wanted the bathroom to be clean before we go away because it was so gross because no one likes to clean the bathroom. There's five of us. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna obviously be the one to do it because nobody else wants to help me. So I'll just do
Mm.
it. And it was during finals week too. So I was already exhausted. And so I was cleaning the bathroom and it took me like 3 hours because of how dirty it was. And the bathroom was it was a handicap bathroom. And so it had like the chair. And well,
Okay. Yeah.
none of us were handicapped. We just got put into a handicap one, I guess, just availability wise. And so they put the seat down and we put like our shampoo and conditioners, which at the time we didn't know that it would create mold because of it like dripping. But yeah, none of us thought about that. We're such smart college students. Um, anyway, so I discovered that then. So I text the group chat and I was like, hey guys, just letting you know that I cleaned the bathroom. I noticed there was mold. So for the future, can we all have like shower caddies so we could avoid having this, issue again, right? The next morning, I woke up at 6 a.m. to get ready for work. I used to be a substitute teacher. And you're exhausted at 6 a.m. So I'm going to shower. Guess whose stuff was there?
Yep. We already know.
And it was just her too. So everybody else respected me at least.
Mm.
And so I was like, and that was another moment where I'm like, should I choose violence today?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was another thing. So then we went away. It was I guess it was Christmas time. So we're away for a month. And that's actually when I started a YouTube channel. And I came back and the girl was just like, oh yeah, I like your YouTube channel. And I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, oh, she's friends with me again? And so I'm thinking, okay, I guess we're good. So I'm here thinking like, hey, we're good for a little bit, and then she's starting to do it again. And I'm like, this is like emotional abuse, right? And so we went away for spring break for a week. And so she had a boyfriend at the time who we followed me on Twitter. I mean, we all follow each other on Twitter. And there was, I think he tweeted that he likes sunflower seeds. It was something very simple. And so I responded back and I said, "Oh, I like sunflower seeds too." That's literally what the conversation was, right?
You were
I
hitting
get,
on him.
how'd you know? Oh my God, I'm such a slut. Okay, so I don't know if I'm allowed to talk like that. I apologize if
No,
that's,
no,
I'm
no,
not
no.
supposed to
That,
talk
that
like.
that was so funny. I appreciated that. No, but I already can see how like petty this that everything you're talking about like it's so universal because bullying doesn't stem from like there's age related things when it comes to bullying as far as like topics and styles, but like everything that happens like the traits are just human traits,
Mhm.
and it's whether it's something from their childhood or what they're doing. So like the stuff you're talking about in college, I've had roommates in the military, I've had friends who are in college, and I've heard stories like this where it's that passive aggressive or that everyone respects one rule and then that one person does like that stuff with the bathroom. I've seen it happen with fridges, with living room, like the shared spaces, like
Yeah.
and it's that level of annoying because it's just like such pettiness. Such
Yeah.
pettiness. It's like, okay, so everyone did this and the no one cleans the bathroom, but you guys are gonna get charged if someone doesn't, so then you have to do it. Like this is all I think we have a lot of people who are relating to this. And
Yeah.
the territorialness, especially of
Mhm.
women in particular, whether it's friends or dating. I've seen it from middle school, elementary school up to college. So as soon as you said you like sunflower seeds too, that's like I'm hearing that through a women's brain. I'm like, two, you're relating to him. You're trying to
Oh,
relate to him
I
now. You're
didn't even
trying to
think
share
about
something in
that.
common with him now.
I actually didn't even think that until today.
I've seen it. I've seen it happen over stuff like
Oh
that.
my
Because
God.
I've also dated women who were territorial and jealous. And if a waitress said said like something, I was like, oh my goodness, like I like that band too. The waitress leaves the table, and then my girlfriend's like, oh, so maybe you should take her to a concert to see them. Maybe you should just date her since you like that band too. So I know women can be petty, and guys too. I've seen it both ways, but especially as you said, the cat fights within dorms. Yeah. So please carry on. Although,
Yeah.
like I said, I see where this is going.
Story gets better. Uh, so yeah, apparently, as you were saying, I actually totally, I didn't even think about that. Oh my God. And plus, it's like, it's not like I don't know him. Like he would always stay at the apartment and he's a
Yeah, yeah.
very friendly guy. Like that's just his personality. So yeah, I mean, and also I had a boyfriend at the time too, by the way, just saying. And that's in that. So anyway, I get back from, spring break. And all of a sudden, like I was actually staying at the time, like the boyfriend I had at the time at his place because the energy was so bad. I was getting annoyed with this passiveness, her ignoring me. I couldn't deal with it anymore. It was
Yeah.
affecting my mental health. So I was staying like at like my I'm gonna say ex because it's not my boyfriend, ex's apartment. So much better. Oh my God, such a relief, by the way. And then but I needed to go back because my car was parked by my apartment. I had to go and get like an MRI done. And so as soon as I go there, that was like her opportunity to attack. So I was just in my room and she comes into my room. She looks at me and she was like, Justine, she was starting saying like, I don't want you to ever use my TV in the living room. You are not allowed to use that TV. I don't appreciate you talking to my boyfriend, and no one here likes you, and you're such a problem, and you're literally so insane. Like you should get your brain checked out. Like all of this stuff. Like I was just sitting here and she was just screaming at me.
Wow.
Scream. She's like, nobody wants you here. Like, just stay out. Like, it was just, I'm like, I was like, okay. And then the roommate next to you, she was sitting there. But the thing is, she didn't say anything. And I think it's fine because I'm sure she looked very startled. So she knew if she were to say something, then she's gonna be the next target.
Yeah.
But actually, after I graduated, so 2 years after that, she'd actually sent me a text message apologizing for that year. She's like, I'm so sorry. I didn't stand up for you when she was acting like this. I was just scared of her. Like, And I said, I appreciate you after all these years reaching out to me and apologizing. That's really nice of you. Um, but at least she knew that she was nuts. But
Yeah.
but yeah, no, she like blew up on me. And and it came out of nowhere because remember I was saying to you, everything was passive. She didn't actually like besides the
Yeah.
tweet, obviously the tweet is passive too. She never yelled at me. She never was like this, and oh, I don't like how you do this. Like it was just everything was passive, everything was quiet. And then one day she just blew up because I said that I like sunflower seeds.
It's a reflection on her character, not yours. And I say this
Hmm.
because you offered a clear communication line to discuss the issues. You said, "Are you upset with me?" I feel like that. So, like, you showed that you were a person who was self-aware, had developed emotional intelligence, and could communicate. And she just chose, and maybe she, could communicate with you and just chose not to. But that's a reflection on her personality for sure.
I feel like she clearly couldn't like the fact that she just walked in. Wait, I'm like thinking about it now. I'm actually
Reliving it.
yeah, I'm getting like random flashbacks in my brain right now. And I think when she came in or something, I think she was like, "Oh, can I talk to you for a second?" I was like, "Yeah." And then the screaming started. I think that's how it was. I do remember the screaming happened in my room. So, yeah, I think that she was like, she came in and she was calm at first, like, "Hey, can I talk to you?" I think, like, and I'm looking at her body language in my head right now, and I could tell that she was a little anxious, and then she blew.
Yeah.
So maybe she was angry, which I mean, whatever, you can be entitled to your feelings, but she didn't, I think she really didn't know how to communicate them. I think she had no
Yeah.
intelligence of that because it's okay if you're upset with somebody. If you really thought I was hitting on your boyfriend, like I would apologize if I upset you in that way. Like that's fine. You're allowed to feel a certain way, but don't come in here saying I need to get my brain checked out. And I
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
use your
Yeah.
TV anymore, apparently, even though the TV was in the living room. Everyone's using it. I don't know. Think about it like this. Why would she just bring up her TV? Is it because
Well,
it showed
it's like it's a
control?
yes, exactly. It's like control because it's like is she the one who bought it for the dorm?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a control thing to further outcast you from everyone, and then you see everyone using the TV and you can't. It's definitely a control thing to be like, it's mine, it's my power.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
She
she's
liked the
like,
power over
first you use
me.
my TV, now you're trying to use my boyfriend.
I'm horrible.
Yeah, yeah, homewrecker. Yeah, yeah, but I still think it's crazy that it was three girls in one dorm room for college. Like
Oh,
I've
five.
seen
Oh, no, no,
two
no.
and two,
Oh, yeah, you're right. So, yeah, three. It's typically usually two and two, but it
two and
was
two.
really rare that there was one that it was three and two. Maybe one of the rooms was slightly bigger because of the handicap,
That's
but they did
exactly what I
like,
was thinking. Yeah,
yeah, they did a bunk bed thing.
yeah, that's still
It was
crazy though in
okay.
college. Gotta have two
Yeah.
roommates in the same room. But yeah, like I said, I've had my fair share of roommate experience, and even just like I had a friend who, like, if other people called me away to talk to them, who would get mad and try to sabotage those relationships, saying this person, actually wants this or that, or this person's doing this and that, and he would like try to get rid of all my friendships. So it was just he and
Mm.
I time because if he had no other friends, so if I wasn't giving him attention, then that's it. And then so for me to have other friends, and I've seen it happen in a lot of toxic relationships, controlling relationships. And I want to go back to one of your first main points, which was the engravement and the ingraining of those insults at youth to modern day. Like you said, you can quote them word for word. And I had the same thing with specifically from my mom, what she said to me. But I've dated a few women who were really self conscious. I don't think I've only dated, I think, one woman who was actually like confident in their looks and had good self esteem because every other woman, and these are all beautiful women, got bullied growing up, whether and some of them online, some of them in person.
Mhm.
And I remember it really shocked me because I figured like almost everyone is a little self conscious, right? That's natural. But then you had the bullying adds on an extreme layer of that. But I was going out with this woman once, and she goes, "We can't be seen in public together." And I was like, "What? What do you mean?" And she goes, I'm so ugly. Like it would be bad for your reputation. You're such a good-looking guy to for people to see you in public with someone like me. Like it would ruin your image." And I was like, what are you talking? Because she was
Oh
gorgeous. I
man.
had no idea. I would have never expected her to say that. I would have never said that. And I wouldn't ever go up to someone or even think that about someone. Like, who you love is who you love. Like, if they're beautiful to you, I'm not going to say like she's too ugly for you or vice versa, but that's what she said. She was nervous to go out in public together because she felt too ugly in comparison. She felt like she wasn't worthy of me. And I just, that's to me, that really stuck with me because I was like, that's really bad that you were bullied that bad that you can't even accept love. And one thing you talked about how it's easier when you have a partner because they're providing you positive feedback, compliments, and honesty. But I just want everyone to be careful too that you don't become reliant on that. That you need someone to love you and love you for you loving yourself if you're tracking, because I've been in relationships where the person I was dating didn't love themselves, so they needed me to love them almost doubly, and they needed so many compliments, so much this, and constant reassurance, which is fine, but it was to a point where it was draining. It was a point of, I'm constantly having to make them feel better for, I don't want to say for no reason, they have their reasons why they feel bad, but because of other people having bullied them. And so I think it's important to get some of your confidence from your partner, but ultimately you need to have confidence just from yourself, just
Hmm.
believing that you look good, believing that you look good. And you talked about neuroplasticity and rewiring the brain and how, there's different ways to do that. For some people, it works best if they just tell themselves when they wake up, today's going to be a great day. I'm beautiful. I'm smart. Some people, it's post-it notes on their desk, on their mirror. But there's a lot of different ways to, you know, convince yourself and rewire because you have other people telling you otherwise. And I really believe what you said about it doesn't go away or disappear, but we learn to filter it, to redirect it, to get rid of it. And yeah, like you said, the permanent engravement, because I've got stuff that my mom said that I think it's interesting. Growing up, I would talk to older people and ask them questions about their high school days or whatever, and they'd be like, "Oh, I don't, remember that. That was forever ago." And I'm sitting here thinking, like, how do you not remember every single little thing? And then, yeah, I've been graduated for a few years now. I'm like, you know what? I don't remember every single second of high school. I remember important events though, and I think it's interesting what things I remember and don't remember from both
Hmm.
high school, middle school, and home. And a lot of it is the trauma, is certain words that we cling on to and latch on to, and that can affect us. Because I was bullied my whole life for being too skinny, for this and that, and even to this day, even when I had bulked up to a much heavier weight class than I was, because I was 128 I was 122 throughout most of high school, and then 128 throughout most of my life afterward, and then had gone up to 145. It was still like always going to be too skinny and never good enough. And I've had tons of people reassure me otherwise, but it's difficult. It can be so damaging, like you said, and especially when people don't understand and they're not helping you out, and when you don't understand. So I totally agree. And I want to go back to you mentioned call for help versus cry for help. And I just wanted to say for everyone, you can call for help. 988 is the suicide and
Hmm.
crisis lifeline, which is something that wasn't always around. So nowadays you can both cry for help and call for help. There is a hotline, and that's an amazing resource out there that I'm really glad they created. And so, Justine, I know you talked about starting a YouTube, which honestly, when she was like, "Oh, I like your YouTube," I kind of took that as I don't want to say a backhand. It seemed like a bit of a snake tone to it. It was like, "Oh, I like your YouTube." I definitely don't think she meant it genuinely, but I can't speak on her behalf. So, that
Yeah, I
being
think.
said, was that what is now the podcast? Was that something different? Did that transition into being the podcast?
Yeah, so when I started in 2016. I started out with comedy sketches and lifestyle, which by the way, the lifestyle helped out with the personal development part and it helped with
Okay.
healing. So I did that up until like right before the pandemic. And at that time, I was like, I love doing YouTube, I love content creating, but I want to do things a little bit more meaningful. So I didn't want to keep doing the like, I don't know, remember to put lemon in your water, kind of like, oh, remember you like wake up early at 6 and like write in your journal. Like, I didn't want to keep doing surface level stuff anymore. I
Okay.
wanted to actually talk more deep about mental health. And so I actually did start like a series on the YouTube channel. It's called Breaking the Stigma With. And I actually had like a friend come over. We did like an interview thing, and it was kind of like also doing yoga in a way. It didn't really perform that well. So that's where I was like, okay, I still want to do this, but like the numbers aren't really that great compared to the other ones. So I was thinking like, okay, I'm sure people actually care and want to hear advice from me and my and stories. So let me do it on a podcast. And at that time, I when people were having podcasts, and I was listening to podcasts then, I really thought it was only for like big people like influencers and like celebrities, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. But then I realized, oh wait, it's not. And then I made like literally I started my podcast with just my phone on like the Anchor app. And so yeah, so that's when I transitioned to the podcast. I was still doing YouTube, like travel vlogs, and like I didn't fully stop YouTube until 2022. So I was still, but I was still doing it. I just wasn't really consistent anymore. And I was like trying to do like a travel vlog kind of thing, but it's just like it's fun the filming, but the editing takes forever, and it's just my energy wasn't there anymore.
Yeah.
And also I do social media management, so I'm already making content. So it makes it hard at the
Yeah.
end of the day
Yeah.
if I want to like edit a video. So podcasting definitely is easier to, edit and such. And I actually use Riverside now, so there's like an AI editing and such. But anyway, so the podcast, I originally started it out because of that reason. And it started being just like episodes of me, solo episodes talking about my story and advice and such. And then people started asking to be on the podcast to tell their story. And I was like, yeah, of course. And then that was just like first one person. And then it just kept like more people kept asking. And in my head, I'm just like, okay, like people want to tell their story. That's amazing. And so oh yeah, and then so I made an Instagram account because I wanted to build a podcast I to promote on social media. And then when I did that, I actually started post reposting my TikTok videos to my Instagram, and that's when Reels just started. And my videos were blowing up on there. Like I was getting like 30,000 likes, sorry, not likes, views, 20,000 views. Like it was consistent across the board. And there were videos where it was like dark humor, and they were based off of my personal experiences in my life, right? And so I was like, oh wow, like this, I guess because people feel less alone and they resonate to what I was like posting. And so since it was growing and I was getting traffic, I'm like, okay, I want to keep growing this, but I can't do this alone. I was still, I know I have like the job that pays bills and everything. And so naturally, I'm just like, I need help. So I invited my friend Ariel on board because she's fantastic at like graphics and such. And she's also been kind of behind the scenes of everything. Like she used to always do my photo shoots and every and such. And she helped me with the name Mentally a Badass. So I told her, I was like, why don't you just join this with me? And so she did, and best decision ever. So it's me and her that run this whole brand. She doesn't do the podcast because I'm the original host. She does help with the podcast when it comes to like social media, but I'm mostly the podcast person. But yeah, so she's great at graphics and she's an artist. So that's like what she brings to the brand. So she would draw a lot of cool graphics that people will resonate with. And so as it kept growing and we're making more connections, I've always wanted to do a clothing line. And so people were really enjoying the graphics that she was making. So in my head, I was just like, oh, why don't we put these like on shirts? Like people love this. So that's when we decided to do that. That started in May of this year. It's still really new to us, and we're still trying to figure things out. And but the our clothing line is what's on our shirts is stuff that like most people really walk around wearing. So like I'm actually wearing one right now where it says I may be smiling, but I'm dead inside. So that kind of goes with like the whole dark humor of the brand. And then we have our most popular one is I'm not lazy, I'm just surviving. So yeah,
Yeah.
people really they feel that. So yes, that's kind of where we are today. And so I'm working really hard on the podcast, hopefully going to try to be pitched to hopefully companies to sponsor and just really keep growing.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like where we are right now.
Yeah, no, I actually I had looked at your clothing store, and I live in a town with one of the most prestigious art schools in America. So there's a lot of women who prefer the alt style. They love Urban
Mhm.
Outfitters, not a sponsor, the grunge wear and stuff. And so you definitely like everything I saw in your store is stuff I see like around my town, and
Mhm.
very popular online. I had looked through it, and it's great. It is stuff that I would buy people. So, and well, at the time of this recording, it's around the holiday season for perfect for buying. When this comes out, it'll be the spring season. So you can put it in a Easter basket for sure, and for all those spring and summer babies and birthdays. But yeah, what I wanted to say, uh, yeah, so that's great. You see just the future being expanding your show. What I wanted to ask was, I know you had stopped doing the YouTube. Are your old comedy sketches still up there for us to see what your college day comedy sketches were? Because I definitely like to see that. I can tell by your reaction, you're like, "Ooh, don't go look that up."
It's private, so you can't.
Oh, okay, okay. I was wondering.
I
So,
hit all of that. I was like, and but I sometimes go back at it, just watching myself and just like, oh, I was a baby.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Do you do comedy at all? Because I know you do a lot of clips on social media from like the show and Life Advice. Do you still do any comedy clips at all?
Good question, because actually I was like literally at 2 in the morning last night. I went through like my whole Instagram for Mentally a Badass, and I was like, man, I was so funny. Like just stuff that I like. If you really go deep down, you see what I really hope I want you to, because it's really funny. And yeah, so I would say the answer is yes, but lately I haven't been that funny, and this is gonna sound really weird because I'm medicated and I'm funnier when I'm sad. I know
Mm.
that sounds really weird, but I'm good, I'm stable, I'm happy, and it's kind of hard to like the funny stuff that I would put on those reels is dark humor. And that's and people will love it, but it's like it's hard for me to make videos when I'm not personally experiencing it anymore. So that's where I'm kind of got a creativity stuck. But I think to answer your question, I think I could be a pretty fun. I mean, I started with comedy. I started out like that. So
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and so regarding your show, I know we've covered a little bit about what it's all about, and I just want, just for a little more direction for like who should check it out and what are they really going to take away from it?
yeah, so the people who should check out my podcast are people who are currently like experiencing like usually the topics are pretty like different for each one.
Okay.
And I bring on experts that have a story. So I have a lot of episodes that are trauma related, like childhood trauma, and a lot of people don't realize how their trauma affects their future. So if they
Right.
have an interest of learning more about mental health, definitely check out my podcast. But yeah, there's like a lot of great minds that I talk to where I've learned literally so much. And I have an episode with someone who we talked about triggers. And I think that can be very
Mm.
beneficial for somebody who may like behave a certain way and get angry at themselves because they're behaving that way. So I have a lot of really amazing people that has honestly have been through hell and came out. So if you are pretty much if that person's kind of like going through hell or going through something, that my podcast would give that beacon of hope because they will see a transformation in that guest.
Awesome. Yeah. What I've noticed is if you get traumatized as a child, you end up either in the military as a podcaster, an artist, or a psychologist. But there are plenty of other options. Those are like the main careers you'll get out of it. But no, it's definitely, it is what you make of it. I know definitely growing up, like, and going through it, you definitely don't see that. But there are so many ways to self improve and so many resources out there. So I definitely recommend everyone goes and checks out your podcast to take away some kind of self improvement from it. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to be a guest on Justine's podcast, if you have that kind of story or that expertise, you can connect with her on Podmatch to talk about pitch about being a guest. And if you don't have a Podmatch account, you can make one using my link in the description below to connect with hosts and guests. So with that all being said, Justine, I want to thank you for coming on the show to continuing to spread resources and awareness about these topics. Like we've mentioned, it is, I want to say, becoming more and more common, and especially with technology as it is now, like we mentioned, social media has drastically expanded. And I've talked before on the show about how comment sections are just so full, depending on the platform, but especially like Instagram and X are toxic, hateful, perverted, and it's almost for no reason. I mean, there are reasons bully. Sometimes they have a sad backstory, and other times it's just power goes to their head, and sometimes it's just for no reason, just to be cruel.
You're
So
just
I really
bored.
appreciate you reaching out to everyone who was in your situation, is going through what you went through, or will be. So thank you for coming on the show and sharing all of that.
Thank you so much for having me. I really had a good time.
Sailing through the ocean blue, nuclear reactors my crew, guiding the ship, the stars as our guide, through the waves we ride, jokes and laughter fill the air. On this voyage we have to share, working together, side by side, as one family we will abide. In the heart of the ship we reside, nuclear operators with pride, powering the vessel with every stride. Our mission, a source of great pride.